The DNA did not reveal one pure Appalachian bloodline. It revealed a web of families. When researchers mapped genetic connections among hundreds of thousands of Americans, one unusually dense network appeared around the Cumberland Mountains. At first, it looked like evidence of an isolated mountain population, but the pattern told a different story. It did not point to one race, one tribe, or one European homeland. It reflected generations of families with different origins becoming connected through settlement, marriage, migration, and survival. And in early America, those differences were not merely personal. Influence whether someone was allowed to vote, inherit land, or marry legally, and whether a child was born free or enslaved. The real mystery was never where one original Appalachian people came from. It was how so many different histories became Appalachian, and why some of them later disappeared. Ask an Appalachian family where its ancestors came from, and the answer may sound simple: Scots-Irish, perhaps English, sometimes just American. That story is often partly true. During the 18th century, large numbers of Protestant migrants arrived from Ulster, the northern province of Ireland. Many entered through Pennsylvania before moving south through the Shenandoah Valley and into the backcountry. Their influence survived in churches, ballads, storytelling traditions, speech patterns, and family names. But cultural influence is not the same as exclusive ancestry. English and German-speaking families followed many of the same roads and valleys. People of African descent, both free and enslaved, also lived and worked throughout the wider region. And indigenous peoples had inhabited, hunted, traded, traveled, and fought across these lands long before European settlement expanded into them. Yet family memory rarely preserves every branch. It preserves the stories that were repeated, the visible names, and sometimes the identities that were safest to remember. A surname might lead back to one immigrant recorded in a deed, gravestone, or family Bible. Behind that name stood women whose birth names disappeared, poor settlers who left few documents, and relatives whom officials described differently. Within only a few generations, several origins could be compressed into one family story. That did not make the remembered history false. It made it incomplete. Then researchers compared the DNA connections of living descendants, and beneath the familiar stories, a much larger pattern appeared. The pattern did not appear as a simple percentage on an ancestry report. It appeared as a network. In 2017, researchers examining recent population structure in North America analyzed genome-wide data from 774,516 consenting Ancestry DNA customers who had been born in or were living in the United States. The database was not a random sample, and commercial DNA databases do not represent every community equally, but its scale revealed patterns of recent shared ancestry in remarkable detail. They were looking for what geneticists call identity by descent connections. When two distant cousins inherit the same long DNA segment from a shared ancestor, it creates a genetic connection. One match reveals little, but millions can form larger networks. Those networks can reflect immigration, geography, religion, settlement patterns, or repeated marriage between extended families. One network was concentrated around the Cumberland Mountains. This did not mean that everyone in Appalachia belonged to one genetic group, nor did it represent the entire region, calculate individual ethnicity, or prove complete isolation. It showed that people connected to the Cumberland region shared unusually dense patterns of relatively recent ancestry. Geography helped shape those connections. Ridges restricted movement, while valleys, roads, and mountain gaps guided families along particular routes. Settlers followed relatives, children married into neighboring households, and families often moved west together. The location changed. The relationships remained. Across generations, those relationships left a detectable pattern, but identifying the ancestors inside it still required historical records, and some of those records revealed that the same relatives could be assigned entirely different racial identities. Many surviving lines led to migrants from Ulster, England, or German-speaking Europe. but surnames reveal only the ancestors whose names survived. DNA can uncover connections hidden behind those names, but it cannot reconstruct the entire history on its own. The Cumberland Network was based on shared DNA segments between probable relatives, not the ethnicity percentages shown in commercial test results. An ethnicity estimate compares DNA with company-defined reference groups. A shared match asks whether two people inherited DNA from the same relatively recent ancestor. Neither provides a complete list of ancestors. Autosomal DNA becomes less predictable with every generation. Someone can descend from a distant ancestor without retaining a detectable segment from that individual. That is why an ethnicity percentage cannot prove one specific ancestor, establish citizenship or membership in an indigenous nation, or confirm a family legend without supporting evidence. The strongest conclusions combine DNA with census, marriage, land, church, and court records, as well as reconstructed genealogies. Together, those sources can restore forgotten branches and reveal why they were forgotten. In some records, the same relatives appeared as white in one document, and as black, mulatto, colored, Indian, or free people of color. Those contradictions reflected a world in which ancestry could determine a person's legal future. One of the clearest examples appears among families historically associated with the name Melungeon. For generations, writers portrayed the Melungeons as a mysterious mountain people, proposing Portuguese, Native American, Mediterranean, African, Middle Eastern, and other origins. Historically, however, the term was most clearly associated with interrelated families around Newman's Ridge in northeastern Tennessee and nearby southwestern Virginia. The label did not identify a biological race. It was a changing social designation for related, but not genetically identical, families. Genealogical research and several forms of DNA testing found no single ancestry shared by everyone under the name. Selected paternal lines traced to European or sub-Saharan African origins, while particular branches may also have evidence supporting indigenous ancestry. No result applies to everyone historically described as Melungeon, and the available research did not establish a uniform Portuguese origin for the central families studied. Not every family tradition was necessarily invented. Some may have preserved a distant connection. Others may have grown through oral tradition, confusion, or later repetition. Yet in some circumstances, describing an ancestor as Portuguese or indigenous may have been safer than openly acknowledging African ancestry, because racial classification was not simply descriptive. It could determine which rights a family was allowed to keep. During the 1840s, several men in Hawkins County, Tennessee, faced legal challenges to their right to vote. Historical research has connected most of those cases to Melungeon-associated families. Most defendants were not convicted, but the accusation showed how quickly disputed ancestry could threaten citizenship. Depending on place and period, racial classification could also affect marriage, education, inheritance, property, court testimony, taxation, and personal security. In an earlier generation, it could determine whether a child was born free or enslaved. In 1662, colonial Virginia established that a child's status followed the legal condition of the mother. A child born to an enslaved woman could therefore be enslaved, regardless of the father's identity. One legal classification could shape the future of an entire family line. Governments developed increasingly rigid racial categories. Real families remained far more complicated. One census taker might describe a family as white. Another might record relatives as mulatto, black, colored, Indian, or free people of color. Some differences reflected terminology, changing laws, appearance, reputation, or official judgment. Some families may also have presented their ancestry in ways that protected their children, their property, their freedom, or their social position. Individual motives are often impossible to recover. The pressure surrounding those decisions is not. When one word beside a family's name could threaten voting, inheritance, marriage, or freedom. Changing a family story was not necessarily vanity. It could be an act of survival. A safer explanation passed forward could eventually become the only story descendants knew. The Melungeons were not the secret origin of all Appalachian people. Their history revealed something more important. An ancestor could disappear, because remembering the truth had once been dangerous. Appalachian families remained connected, not because they never left the mountains, but because many of them left together. Geography mattered, but Appalachia was never a world in which no one moved. Families crossed the Cumberland Gap and continued west. Relatives followed one another from Virginia into Tennessee, Kentucky, Ohio, and beyond. During the 20th century, that movement accelerated. Mechanization reduced coal employment, mines closed, and small farms offered limited opportunities. Meanwhile, wartime and post-war factories in northern and midwestern cities needed workers. Large numbers of Appalachian migrants moved towards cities such as Cincinnati, Dayton, Cleveland, Detroit, and Chicago. From the outside, it looked as though people were abandoning the mountains, but much of the migration followed kinship. One relative found work, then siblings, cousins, neighbors, and in-laws followed. Churches, neighborhoods, and work crews rebuilt parts of mountain communities far beyond Appalachia. Later descendants might never meet or know that their grandparents had lived in neighboring valleys, yet some relationships could remain visible in their DNA. The old stereotype claimed Appalachians were genetically distinctive because they never left. The history suggests something more complicated. Large numbers left, but often together. The mountains shaped their connections. Migration distributed them across the country. So, what exactly had the DNA discovered? Not the birthplace of one people, the formation of a new identity. The DNA revealed what happened after different histories met in North America. People with different languages, religions, legal identities, and ancestral origins became connected through families and communities. They shared farms, mines, railroads, towns, churches, migration routes, and eventually industrial cities. Older languages faded. Distant homelands became incomplete family stories. From those overlapping histories emerged a new identity, Appalachian. That identity is regional, cultural, and historical. It is not a biological race. Families helped create it, and some relationships remain visible in their descendants' DNA. DNA can reveal the network. Documents can restore names. Court records can expose the pressure surrounding identity, but no test can reconstruct every branch or explain every ancestral decision. An ancestry test does not simply tell you what you are. It gives you evidence that must be compared with history. And this is only one of the family histories that DNA is helping bring back into view. Subscribe if you want to follow the others, because the most important discoveries are rarely the ones that reduce a people to a percentage. They are the ones that reveal how separate histories became connected, why certain ancestors were remembered, and why others disappeared. If your family has roots in Appalachia, write the state, county, or mountain community in the comments. The place your family remembers may not be where its story began. It may be where many different stories finally became one.